You probably saw the headline by now. Breaking news. 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports win. I put win, but they've been granted the preliminary injunction in this lawsuit versus NASCAR. This news broke about 40 minutes ago or so. I first saw it from Bob Pockrass. So everybody needs to, of course, follow Bob Pockrass. He has great updates, great information on this topic. 35 minutes ago, so it was 12:37 p.m. Central Time. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri.
In a stunning turn of events that's shaking up the NASCAR world, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports have just pulled off something truly incredible. On December 18th, 2024, these two teams secured a major legal victory against NASCAR that's going to change the game for the 2025 season and potentially beyond.
Grass writes, tweets, breaking, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports have obtained the preliminary injunction to race as chartered teams in 2025, as well as for the approval of the SHR charters. Of course, that means the Stewart-Haas Racing charters. This is big news, and it's a big break for the side of the 2311, Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, and obviously Front Row Motorsports, owned by Bob Jenkins as well. So they can sign the charters. They can run as chartered teams in 2025 while this lawsuit.
Let's break this down and see why what 2311 just did is absolutely insane. U.S. District Court Judge Kenneth D. granted 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports a preliminary injunction that allows them to compete as chartered teams in the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. So who are these teams that just took on NASCAR and won? 2311 Racing is co-owned by none other than NBA legend Michael Jordan and NASCAR star Denny Hamlin. They're relatively new to the scene, having entered the Cup Series in 2021, but they've quickly become a force to be reckoned with. On the other side, we've got Front Row Motorsports, owned by Bob Jenkins. They've been around since 2004 and even won the Daytona 500 back in 2021 with Michael McDowell. Now here's where things get really interesting. Back in September 2024, NASCAR offered a new charter agreement, and 13 of the 15 teams signed it. But 2311 and Front Row, they said no way. They refused to sign what they called a take-it-or-leave-it deal. Instead, they did something pretty bold. They filed an antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR in October 2024. In this lawsuit, 2311 and Front Row accused NASCAR of some serious stuff. They alleged that NASCAR has used anti-competitive practices to prevent fair competition in the sport. They even went as far as accusing NASCAR of unlawful monopolization of premier stock car racing in order to enrich themselves at the expense of the premier stock car racing teams. That's some heavy accusations right there. Now let's talk about what this preliminary injunction actually means. Judge Bell's ruling allows 2311 and Front Row to race under the 2025 charter agreement terms, but with one big exception. The release language in Section 10.3 of the agreement isn't enforceable for these teams. What does that mean? Basically, it means these teams can continue their lawsuit against NASCAR while still racing as chartered teams. The judge also ordered NASCAR to approve the team's purchases of charters from Stewart-Haas Racing, which shut down its operations at the end of the 2024 season. This is huge because it means both 2311 and Front Row can expand to 3-car teams for the 2025 season. For 2311, we're looking at a powerhouse lineup of Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, and Riley Herbst. Front Row's not far behind with Todd Gilliland, Noah Gragson, and potentially Zane Smith in the mix. That's some serious talent hitting the track next season. They initially requested an injunction back in November, but it was denied by the U.S. District Judge Frank D. Whitney. So what changed? Well, the case got transferred to Judge Bell, and the teams came back with new evidence showing how they'd be harmed if they couldn't race as chartered teams. This new evidence was pretty compelling. According to court documents, Tyler Reddick had informed 2311 Racing that they were in breach of his driver and personal services agreement. This agreement required the team to provide him with a chartered car. Reddick gave the team a 30-day deadline to fix the situation, or he'd become a free agent. That deadline? December 18th, 2024. The very day the injunction was granted. But it wasn't just Reddick. Noah Gragson's contract with Front Row Motorsports had a similar clause. Riley Herbst, who recently signed with 23XI, also required a chartered car. Even Bubba Wallace and Corey Haim were getting antsy, saying they needed to know the team's plans as soon as possible so they could explore other options if needed. And it's not just drivers who were concerned. Major sponsors were getting nervous too. Monster Energy, a key sponsor for 23XI Racing, told the team they were delaying a NASCAR-related Ultimate Race Weekend contest because they weren't sure about the team's status. Over at Front Row, Love's Travel Stops, their biggest sponsor, was worried about whether the team could meet its obligations without a charter. Judge Bell took all this into account. In his ruling, he said, "The present prospect of the loss of star drivers constitutes irreparable harm that cannot fully be rectified by the final judgment after trial." He added, "These are changed circumstances that the court finds have moved plaintiffs speculative to present and immediate." But here's where it gets really interesting. Judge Bell made some pretty bold statements about NASCAR's control over stock car racing. He said, "The court finds that NASCAR possesses monopoly monopsony power in the relevant market, which is the market for premier stock car racing teams in the United States." He even pointed out that other racing series like Formula One and IndyCar aren't real substitutes for NASCAR. In fact, the judge went as far as to say, NASCAR's Cup Series is the only premier stock car racing series in the United States, and premier stock car racing is a distinct form of automobile racing with unique cars and highly specialized racing teams, for which other types of motorsports like Formula One and IndyCar are not substitutes. Therefore, NASCAR fully controls which race teams can compete at the highest level of stock car racing. Effectively, it has a 100% market share. This statement is huge for the ongoing antitrust lawsuit. By acknowledging NASCAR's monopoly power, the judge has given a big boost to the team's case against the racing body. The ruling also sheds light on the complex situation with the Stewart-Haas Racing charter transfers. According to Joe Custer, the president of Stewart-Haas Racing, NASCAR had told them multiple times that they would approve the charter sales to 23XI and Front Row. But then things got messy. Jerry Freese, the general manager of Front Row Motorsports, revealed that NASCAR changed its tune. They said they'd only approve the transfers if the teams dropped their lawsuit. But this move has backfired spectacularly on NASCAR. The court has now ordered them to approve these purchases, effectively forcing NASCAR to allow the grid expansion for 2025. So how are people reacting to all this? Well, Denny Hamlin, co-owner of 23XI Racing, couldn't contain his excitement. He took to social media posting, "Yes!" He followed that up with a gif from the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, showing Will Smith's character overcome with emotion. Clearly, this win means a lot to the team. Jeffrey Kessler, the attorney representing 23XI and Front Row Motorsports, was a bit more formal, but equally thrilled. He said, "We welcome today's decision by Judge Bell, granting a preliminary injunction in our favor. The court's ruling allows 23XI and Front Row Motorsports to race existing cars as chartered teams in next year's Cup Series. The decision also requires NASCAR to approve both teams' purchases of a third charter from Stewart-Haas Racing and allow these cars to also race as chartered teams in the 2025 season." Kessler didn't stop there. He added, "We are confident in the strength of our case and will continue to fight so that racing can thrive and become a more competitive and fair sport in ways that benefit teams, drivers, sponsors, and most importantly, our fans." This ruling isn't just a win for 23XI and Front Row Motorsports. It could have huge implications for all of NASCAR. The charter system, which NASCAR introduced in 2016, was supposed to provide stability and value for team owners, but it's been controversial, with some arguing it limits competition and innovation in the sport. This lawsuit and the preliminary injunction could force some big changes in how NASCAR operates. We might see a restructuring of how revenue is shared between NASCAR and its teams. It could even open the door for other teams to challenge NASCAR's authority in the future. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This fight is far from over. NASCAR still has the right to appeal this decision, although they haven't said yet if they will. And remember, this is just a preliminary injunction. The main antitrust lawsuit is still ongoing, and we could see a trial before the 2026 NASCAR season kicks off. In fact, the court has set a case management schedule that, unless the parties reach a settlement, calls for a trial on the team's claims to be wrapped up before the 2026 NASCAR season starts. So we could be in for a long, drawn-out legal battle that could completely reshape American motorsport. Bob Jenkins, the owner of Front Row Motorsports, told the Associated Press back in October that the two teams stood to lose out on $45 million in combined revenue if they had to compete without charters. This injunction has essentially secured that money for the teams, giving them some financial stability as they continue their legal fight. But this isn't just about 2311 and Front Row. This ruling could embolden other NASCAR teams to challenge the status quo. If these two teams end up winning their antitrust suit, we could see a flood of similar actions from other teams. That could lead to a complete overhaul of NASCAR's business model. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on upcoming content.